we'll come back to that. There's more questions, I'm sure. Richard. Professor Richard Collins from the Open University. What do you make of the BBC's position? Okay.
Okay. I think that the process of having the trust hold the BBC executive to account is, although clumsy, although producing extraordinarily complicated bureaucratic dances and delays, a positive thing. It's forced into the open a number of things that are good to have forced into the open, and I'll come back to that. I think where we see the inadequacies of this process is that this is actually the kind of wrong scale and the wrong place to be having a strategic review. We've got a very substantial change in the overall environment of the British media, which is usually constructed as a series of threats to the incumbents, and we've had a kind of rehearsal this morning already of the threats, quote unquote, to the BBC. But, you know, one could make the same sort of case about ITV, Channel 4, and 5. But those changes also open up opportunities, and I think that that's, you know, why Open Democracy are right to have constructed this event. It's about the possibilities of new institutions coming along, pluralising the provision of public service content, diversifying institutions, and so on. Now, within that changed context, what the Trust calls an inflection point, I think that it is inconceivable that the BBC would not have a major, substantial role in the future. The question is, what's the proportionality of that intervention, and what's the best articulation of new entrants coming along? There's a very, very persuasive and powerful case put forward by the Scottish Broadcasting Commission for another form of public service provision in Scotland. We've seen a host of minnows from the universities, museums, libraries, galleries, and institutions like Open Democracy, showing what opportunities there are in, you know, a very small-scale way, many of them with a may-fly life because they don't have institutional status and funding. So it seems to me that actually there's a case for a much larger scale strategic review, you know, maybe something as old-fashioned as a Royal Commission. But we are where we are, we've got what we've got. And I see, you know, the BBC strategic review basically as the first step in the courtship dance leading up to the next licence fee. Caroline today, and in sort of black letter form in this document, we've had, you know, a persuasive rhetoric articulated, and I think it is the right kind of rhetoric. It's important to emphasise the importance of distinctiveness of programming. It's important to emphasise value for money and efficiency, partnerships, and so on. But actually, if one looks concretely at what comes out of this document, and here, you know, is another of the positives. We've got a process with considerably more transparency than before. What comes out? Actually, a series of quite small mice. We've got putting quality first. Well, concretely, what that means is 10 million extra quid a year for children's programming and 25 million quid extra for BBC Two. I mean, these are not large-scale commitments in an organisation turning over close to 4 billion a year. We've got guaranteeing access as a rhetorical commitment at the same time as the BBC is petitioning Ofcom for a change in its HDTV licence regime, which would, A, run against a commitment that Michael Grade made, that the BBC will always, and I quote, be on the side of unencryption. Essentially what BBC is asking for is to add DRM, digital rights management, to its HD signal. And the effect of that will be to make obsolete the admittedly small population of HD PVRs that are largely there, which runs against an explicit requirement that the Trust made in the public value test for NQTV. So we've got, I think, a lot of warm words, but actually when one comes down to kind of picking over what these means, the result is, I think, somewhat underwhelming.
So do you have a vision then?
I do have a vision, and I think vision is a good word, Steve. Thank you. It's one I've got several times in my notes, and I'll come to the vision. I think one of the things that is not here enough is a vision. And Ruth, long ago, talked about public service as being not about administrative form, but about values and substance. And I think that the BBC is now increasingly focused on administrative form. And we see that in the employment structure of the organisation. It's an employment structure, I think, where basically the suits endure and the programming staff are experiencing extremely and increasingly casualised existence. As the strategy review says at a number of points, they spend most of their career in the commercial sector. If they do that in an increasingly hand-to-mouth context, you can't be surprised that what comes out is sort of Me Too programming. So I think there's a loss of the vision of what a distinctive institution ought to be, and that goes to the character of employment there. And I think there's also room for a larger scale vision of public service content provision. And the size and disproportionality of the BBC, I think, stands in the way of realising that. So my vision is one of a pluralised form of public service content provision, and a smaller, more efficient BBC, which is returning to its vision, its proper identity as a public service body. And that means, I think, quite a long process of rebuilding of the institution, rebuilding a sense of the BBC is different and has to be different. And that means looking again at staffing arrangements, continuity of employment, and value.
So would you go along with arrangements for contestability in funding? What means would you enact?
I think it's a question of where contestability comes in. I've spent most of my career, not all of it, but most of it in the university sector. And there you've got, not a wholly comfortable balance, but you've got a mix of contestability for institutional funding, but fairly long-term continuity of employment for many of staff, although, again, there's a sort of growing casualisation in the university sector. So it's articulating that balance. I think that contestability is a very good thing for keeping institutions honest, for managing change, and for adapting to changed circumstances. But it also has to be melded with institutional continuity and values. And I think that balance is the balance that the BBC doesn't now have right.
But you wouldn't see a sort of a looming disaster, the abyss beckoning, if the licence fee were one way or another to be put into the hands of people other than the BBC for the purpose of
the licence fee is in the hands of people other than the BBC. It is in the hands of the government. And we don't have even a public process of setting the level of the licence fee at the kind that they have in Germany. So actually what we've got is BBC institutional survival, the institutional interests, and of course the personal interests of those people in it, down to managing relationships with government.
Thank you very much. Stephen Barnett. So the BBC finds space in the fight of its life and has got its priorities in the broadest sense. And